Hello and welcome to Heritage Auctions. I'm Christina Reese and I'm here today with Aviva Lehmann, the Senior Vice President of American Art with Heritage, and we're in Chicago today.
We sure are.
We're met sort of in the middle.
That's right. We're flushing the format.
I'm in Dallas normally. You're in New York normally, but this is our beautiful Chicago-based headquarters, and we're happy to be here. And why are we here? What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about two auctions.
We are. We have a lot. It's an embarrassment of riches coming up at Heritage, an American Art season coming up in May. And I love that we're doing it in the Chicago office because, as you said, we often do these videos together in Dallas.
We do.
At our beautiful recording studio. But because of so much of our mission statement really is collecting into the home of the every person, and we have these beautiful offices, galleries for exhibition across the country, I thought it would be really great to invite our viewers to see us in Chicago and let them know that they don't have to come just to New York or Dallas to see these incredible masterworks.
That's right.
Because we really love to tell the story of great American material in any of our categories all over the country. And this is one of my favorite offices.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's almost everyone's favorite office really who works there. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful vibe, actually.
In the design district of Chicago.
And we do previews here a lot.
Yes.
For most of our signature auctions, a lot of times the lots will come here and preview, and it's a nice time. I walked into a reception today when I walked in.
Jewelry.
It was great. It's really nice. It's really beautiful.
Everything, there's a synergy where our categories speak to each other in our regional offices.
And you can see that.
So I was very excited about that. And of course, these auctions coming up have such incredible material that we will discuss, but specifically Golden Age illustration, there is such a cult following for this sort of material in Chicago and in the Midwest.
That makes sense.
So we've got clients coming in from all over the Midwest to see some of these beautiful paintings while they're on view here in Chicago this week.
So the auction, we're going to talk about two auctions, but the primary auction we're talking about right this second, they're both on May 16th, by the way, is our signature American Art auction, a tightly curated, very careful, very thorough, very scholarly auction of, like you say, Golden Age American. Okay. So tell us about what's going to be in this auction. What are some of the highlights and some of them that we have with us today?
Well, what we've got in this sale, and it's really interesting how every auction sort of comes to life organically and builds around certain key anchors of the auction. This auction, we've got really prime examples of masters of the Golden Age illustration, from Rockwell, Leyendecker, Maurice Sendak, who's not technically Golden Age, but he's perhaps the most important and certainly the most celebrated and widely known illustrator of children's books in our country.
That's right.
So this auction, some of the anchor material in this auction, and it's a small boutique sale, I like to call it. It's 48 lots in our main signature important American Art sale. And then in the afternoon, we'll be holding round 2 of our Boy Scouts collection, which we'll talk about in a moment. But what I like about what's happening naturally, evolving with our major important American Art sale that we hold twice a year in May and November, sort of timed with American Art fairs, American Art sale weeks in New York. We try to put our best foot forward with this material. We've sort of evolved over the years, at least in the time I've been at Heritage. I've been here now, I'm in my 13th year. But as many of our audience know, we are sort of at the forefront of the online auction. And we hold at Heritage, I want to say, over 1,200 auctions a year, most of them online only. And the reason I'm saying this is that the marketplace is changing pretty fast in that people are very comfortable bidding on 6 and even 7-figure artworks in online only sales.
That's right.
And we are therefore realizing we have that built-in audience for our online platform, which is something we do very well. So we now hold throughout the year regular offerings of American art, Western art, Texas art, California, wildlife,
European, ethnographic,
and all of these sort of fit into the mold. They all feed the story of what we're doing with our major banner sales. But we are always going to hold these sort of trophy sales, a banner auction, where we get to really show off, for lack of a better term, in educating our audience on the importance of each and every work. So I'm very excited for everybody to see this catalog. We haven't even sent it to press. It goes to the printers tomorrow. So our audience will be able to see these beautiful catalogs in a few weeks. But everything is on our website as well. And we look at these catalogs as, you know, they've almost become collector's items in the collecting community.
They're like great coffee table books.
They're great coffee table books.
And collectors want our catalogs. They keep our catalogs.
Exactly. And
for reference and everything else.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, you know, of course, our older, more seasoned clients in their 60s, 70s, and beyond like a hard copy catalog. I mean, I like to read a newspaper. I like a hard copy book.
I do too.
But what's beautiful is that our newer collectors, our Gen Z collectors, are coming into the category. They're getting their feet wet, so to speak, on beginning to collect in our online offerings, getting familiar with the schools of art, in the material, in the importance, the relevance of all the different genres of American art. So everybody comes to anxiously wait with bated breath to see this hard printed catalog.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And you know, one thing that's important, we probably haven't talked about this before, but Heritage really did sort of, I don't know if you use the word pioneer, but this online bidding aspect of Heritage, we perfected that.
Yes.
A few years ago.
No question.
And I mean, we made it easy. We made it understandable. We made it legible. We made it, it's the kind of thing that does encourage people, even the newest collectors, to dip their toe into collecting with an auction house.
That's right. And in fact, what's very interesting, I've noticed in the past years, once we've sort of had an explosive year in 2024, getting to almost $2 billion in sales and major stories of $32 million ruby slippers and, you know, the whole shebang.
Yes.
But what I love about what's happening now is that Gen Z collectors, who are really the future of collecting in our country and in the world, are very comfortable with the online platform. And as a result, Heritage has this sort of unmatched talent for cultivating new and younger collectors, which is something the whole art world is desperately trying to do.
We have the categories for it too, that end up being cross-category appeal. For younger collectors, newer collectors.
So, you know, you hear some naysayers in the media and other auction houses are saying collecting is dead. It's not dead.
Oh no.
It's evolving.
Yes.
It's not dead, quite the opposite.
That's right. That's right. We keep adding categories.
We keep adding categories. Exactly.
And they're working.
It's working. And you know, the way we exhibit with jewelry, with urban art, with historical, with coins, it makes sense. So in this gallery today, I'm very thrilled to show you some highlights on this wall right behind us.
Yeah, we can start here.
We've got material all throughout the gallery, but this is sort of a nice cross-section and representation of this auction.
Sure. So what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with Golden Age? Do you want to start with Rockwell?
Let's start with Rockwell.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can't have an American auction at Heritage without having some major material by Norman Rockwell. We have become the go-to auction house for illustration. Period. We still, the most expensive Rockwell ever sold at auction since 2021 is Home for Thanksgiving, which we sold for about $4.3 million. No other Rockwell has sold for as much or more since. So the audience, the marketplace understands. Curators, advisors, they know that if they're looking for major Rockwell, they're going to find it in our auctions.
That's right.
And we are not disappointing with this beautiful, incredibly important, nostalgic, iconic Saturday Evening Post cover that comes to us from a collector in the Midwest, actually. And it is titled Marionettes. And it is a Saturday Evening Post cover from 1932. And what I'd like to say first, for those of us who are not familiar with the format that Rockwell uses in his Post covers, there's an evolution with his covers for the Post. And let me first start by saying that with Rockwell, there's his Saturday Evening Post material, and then there's everything else. So the Saturday Evening Post group is sort of the holy grail for collectors and museums who want major Rockwell in the 7, 8-figure, maybe one day 9-figure range, who knows. But this one I love showing because when I first saw it in the owner's house, my heart skipped a beat because I know this image. Many of us know this image. It's one of the most reproduced images in Rockwell's entire body of work. And what I was starting to say earlier is the composition, this sort of white background with the black lines going horizontally across, that was sort of classic Saturday Evening Post cover up until, I would say, maybe the 40s when they started using more colors, and then Rockwell and Leyendecker started going, you know, technical overload, color overload, composition overload with color going to all four corners of the composition.
Blowing out the margins.
Exactly, blowing out the margins. But what we have here is one of the earlier templates for a post cover.
Very classic.
Very classic, exactly. It's a true collector's piece.
I love how graphic it is too. All that negative space just makes it pop.
Yes, you've got nowhere else to look. It is, again, it's a cinematic film still, which is what Golden Age illustration was intended to be.
Yeah.
It's a film still of a movie, it feels like, right? And so it's an older man with his marionettes, and Rockwell is very particular about what he chooses to put in the composition. So right here, it's all about the central figure and his two puppets, right? And everything about this work is very intentional by Rockwell and very timeless. So even here in 2025, you've got this older gentleman in his work smock, his tattered shirt, his outfit that it looks like he wears probably every day of his life, his hands that are worn from working on his puppets, the classic American worker. You know,
and he's delighted. He's thrilled to be doing what he's doing.
He's very completely immune to anything going on around him.
That's right. That's right.
And then you've got this stark contrast to this gorgeous clothing of the marionettes, right? This sort of old, harking back to a yesteryear costume of these two figures that look like, you know, Lady Antoinette and her suitor, so to speak. But that's very intentional by Rockwell. Everything that Rockwell did is sort of not only an explosion of senses when you look at it, but he wants you to stand in front of his paintings and think about what you're seeing. And the messages that he wanted you to take away from his art in the 30s is very much the same and very as timely today in 2025 as it was nearly a century ago. So in this climate of our world, certainly in America, we are gagging for a sense of nostalgia, for a sense of a simpler time, for a sense of peace, for a sense of elevating the craftsman, for the simple moments that give you pleasure, whether it's your hobby or your work. It is so desperately needed in our world today.
Yes.
So a work like this is going to resonate with young and old alike. And the estimate on this work is 800,000 to 1.2 million. And I'm really excited to see how the marketplace responds to it.
I think what you're saying about the nostalgia factor and people they're looking for something to kind of re-anchor them right now. And the American art auctions that we have at Heritage do exactly that.
Yes, very much so.
Usually across the lots.
Very much so. And you know, while you're saying this, I'm thinking that sort of everything that Heritage does sort of leans into that message.
Pushes that button.
Yeah, whether it's a coin or an historical document or ruby slippers or a Babe Ruth jersey,
a comic
or
book.
Rockwell or a comic book, it all tells the story of our country. And that, I believe, is one of the main reasons that Heritage is so exciting to the marketplace right now. You know, we've gone back to the basics of what auctions should be about. Quality material from fresh sources that tell the great American story.
That's right. So what else do we have behind us that we are, while we're on Rockwell, should we move to Leyendecker?
Sure.
The divers?
You can't talk about Rockwell without Leyendecker. They are the two co-grandfathers. Well, you know, there's Howard Pyle founded the Golden Age, you know, sort of started the Howard Pyle School. You had N.C. Wyeth, but Rockwell and Leyendecker are now the two household names.
Yes.
And we're really excited to have 3 beautiful Leyendecker Saturday Evening Post covers in this auction.
Wow.
2 of them, one on this wall here, are from the Michael Dolis family collection.
Right.
Michael Dolis, for those who don't know who he is, he was a incredibly talented and popular illustrator who learned under Leyendecker and Rockwell. He knew them, he was close with them. He did post covers, he did colliers, he did all sorts of commercial illustration.
Didn't he learn by copying Rockwell?
Yes, he did.
Like that's how.
Very much so.
He taught his own hand. And
Very much so.
Yes.
And he was close with both artists, so much so that his collection of Leyendeckers, he had 10 Leyendecker post covers, all really beautiful, all very diverse in their subject matter and in their style. But they all sort of showcase Leyendecker at the height of his talents. And Dolis acquired all 10 of them from Leyendecker directly.
Wow.
Leyendecker said to him, "You appreciate what I'm doing here. Come, take a look. Anything you want, you can have."
Wow.
So Dolis went in and picked 10 specific works that he thought came together to illustrate Leyendecker's prowess as a master of illustration from various, as I said, various subject matter, various technical aspects, viewpoints. So the one right behind me called Diving In is one of my favorites from the whole collection. We chose to sell it in May, spring season.
It's so charming.
It's so charming. And those of us coming to our Palm Beach preview will be able to see, we're going to do a big banner of it outside in Palm Beach. You know, swimming is perfect for Florida.
Yep.
But what I love about this one, besides the fact, if you look at this work, again, just like Rockwell, simple. He chooses very specifically what to include in the composition. It is simply a white background. When you look at the water, it's just a few bubbles of pattern.
I know.
But your mind creates, with all that negative space, creates the whole narrative of the water, of the diving board. You see it all in your mind's eye. And everybody who stands in front of it can see something different.
Yeah.
That's sort of the beauty of it.
You can hear it.
You can hear it. You can smell the
can
grass.
smell it. Yes.
You can hear the boys laughing and screaming and splashing. And this work was one of Michael Dolis's favorites in the entire group, because for those of us who collect and those of us who are artists watching, you know how hard it is to get that vantage point. You know, it goes back to the old masters time. Yeah. It's very hard to get that foreshortening right.
Right.
And Leyendecker got it.
Yeah,
he got it. He nailed it. So I just love this. This is just childhood at its best. Just like Football Hero, what we sold in 2021 for $4.1 million. That was childhood, boyhood at its best.
Yeah.
So I'm particularly fond of this one as well.
Yeah, I can see why. I like it too. Speaking of childhood, let's talk about this Sendak.
Yeah,
we need to talk about this.
This
Sendak.
is a moment.
Yes, it is.
This is really a moment, and this work is going to appeal not only to illustration collectors and American art collectors, but honestly, collectors of American pop culture. Period.
Yes.
Because this is the prototype. This is Sendak's first illustration, his first mind's creation of his monsters for Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah.
And this work
is so good. It's so complete. It's so
incredible.
Resolved. And
this literally, from Sendak's brain to the paper, #1.
Yes.
You know, this is sort of the equivalent of a #1 comic book or a #1 baseball card, because there's only one, and this is it. I mean, this is the one where you can see the wheels turning. And this work was never meant to be made available for public auction. This work was originally meant to be a gift to a museum that holds much of Sendak's body of work from his estate, but due to a few circumstances, that changed rather recently, very close to our consignment deadline. And we were lucky enough to squeeze this in right under the deadline and bring this to the sale. And all proceeds of this work are going towards a library's benefit.
Oh, nice.
So I urge everybody to go to our website, ha.com. You will see all about the information on the library, the work's history. But it's interesting, this work, because you see this is the pivotal moment where little Max washes up on the shore.
When he first gets there.
And the monsters, which, by the way, he based, I don't know if you know this, Christina, but Sendak's parents were Holocaust survivors. They emigrated to New York, lived on the Lower East Side, Brooklyn, that whole world.
Oh, yes.
And Sendak, as a young boy, used to get irritated by his immigrant cousins, uncles, aunts from Europe, from Germany, from Poland. They used to come over and squeeze him and say, I want to eat you, and squeeze his cheek, which we've all experienced.
Yes.
I remember that feeling that hurt when you're, the older folks in the family do that. Well, he based his monsters on his uncles, his immigrant uncles, named Bernard and Moish. These are the names of the monsters. So this is his first illustration.
And here they come.
Of them. Here they come.
Face.
It's incredible. And if you compare these works to the works that you see, the illustrations in the book, they're not quite as menacing yet. They're a little bit more elegant in this first go-round. But I sort of love that, because you sort of see where his mind came from and where it's going. So this is pretty important. You will not see another Sendak of this importance to come to the market, period. So the work is in with an estimate of $150,000 to $250,000.
Yep.
The auction record for Sendak is well over $300,000.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. But this is a moment.
Yeah.
This is a moment for book collectors, for illustration collectors, for collectors of anything related to our country.
Oh, I just love it.
Goosebumps.
We have a trove of Ernie Barnes paintings. I feel so lucky to have these, and we've gotten to work with Ernie Barnes material in the past.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
So tell us about what we have.
This is an auction I won't soon forget because of the Ernie Barnes works in this sale. And we have a number of them. I think there's 7.
I think so too.
But it's a moment. It is sort of the all-star moment for Ernie Barnes in this auction because they come to us, these 7 works, from 3 different collections. Let's first talk about, we've got one right here, The Comedian, which I love. It comes to us from a collector, a couple, that bought this work in LA, which is where Barnes lived for many, many years after his football career. And they bought this work, I want to say 40-something years ago. And the collector who bought this is a award-winning screenwriter from Hollywood. And that happens a lot. You know, there are a lot of people in Hollywood and in the comedy circle. Eddie Murphy owns Sugar Shack, of course. But there is such a strong synergy between performers, entertainers, and art.
That's right.
And Barnes understood that. He had such a high emotional intelligence as such a young person, you know, and I think that came because he was self-taught. He grew up in poverty. He was an NFL player, football player for a number of years. And then from there became a full-time artist and worked on commissions, not only for the NFL, but for the Olympics. We've got an incredible work that shows, you know, it's a picture from the Olympics.
Yeah.
Incredible. But this work in particular really grips me because, number one, it's the only work in the group of 7 that are in this auction that have his original fence wood frame. This is a frame that Barnes made himself.
Yes.
He took this wood from his backyard, this is the story goes, where he created these fence frames as sort of an homage, a love letter to his father.
Yes.
He was a man that had very strong connections to his family, to the community, always wanted to give back. Even in his art, he wanted to impart a feeling of happiness, a feeling of cohesiveness in his art, which is why you will notice in most of his major masterworks, his figures have their eyes closed. They're sort of grooving. They're going like this, right?
That's right.
And that's important because even though he came later than the Harlem Renaissance, he's often sort of lumped with the Harlem Renaissance. And whereas artists of the Harlem Renaissance, like Romare Bearder, like Jacob Lawrence, chose to focus on the hardships of Black life in our country, he chose quite the opposite. He might show his figures in poverty, but they're always happy.
Yeah.
They had their eyes closed and they were jamming and playing music and playing ball. And that was very intentional because he was a happy man.
Yeah.
He was a joyful mountain of a man. Always with a cigar in his mouth, always happy. But he wanted to impart a message of unity. He wanted viewers, whether it was in the 1970s or today, to look at his work and feel no color, no hardship, no adversity when he looked at these works. This particular work is interesting to me because he's showing one figure alone, of course, in his sort of neo-mannerist style.
Yes.
Look at those fingers.
Oh, I know.
Look at the
We
weight.
have to talk about the physicality of his paintings.
His fingers are the best fingers in, you know, some of the best fingers in American art.
I know.
But this is a work where you clearly, this is the end of the show. You're alone. It's the entertainment alone on a stage, and clearly people are throwing, they're jeering him, you know? But that entertainer has to stay up there with a smile on his face and entertain until the curtain comes down. That's a powerful moment.
Yeah.
That's a powerful scene. It's incredible. And so I'm really happy to talk about this one right behind us.
Yes.
But to move from the entertainer, switching gears to this very powerful, very strong, and very joyful group of works, 4 works that we have in the sale from the collection of John Meekum.
Tell us who he is.
So for those of you who are not familiar with Mr. Meekum, who is a wonderful human being, big personality, just like Ernie Barnes, and the two of them were very good friends for 40 years. Meekum comes from a Houston family, an oil and gas family, very successful man. His family was successful before him. He's still very much, you know, involved in his businesses. But very early on, he got into sports.
Yes.
And sports ownership of teams, of cars. So he made history at the age of 27 when his car won the Indy 500. So that sort of put him on the map. And he was sort of a playboy, big personality. Everyone was sort of enamored with John Meekum at the time. And a year later, he bought the New Orleans Saints.
That's right.
So it was around that time that he met Ernie Barnes. And I actually asked Mr. Meekum, and I urge all of you, we have a beautiful video on our website, onha.com, where you can see Mr. Meekum talking with me and my colleague Mike Provenzale from sports, and we're having a great conversation about the synergy between sports and art, and talking about Ernie Barnes himself. But he was sort of a visionary, Mr. Meekum, in his ability to look at these works in the 70s and say, this is major. Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot about African-American art, but I know this is something.
Yeah.
And he went on to commission and buy a beautiful group of over 15 works he owns that he bought directly from Barnes. And they had this beautiful relationship, a friendship, for well over 40 years.
Yeah.
So when Mr. Meekum approached us and said he'd like to try selling a few, I said, this is the perfect collection for heritage because, as you know, as many of you know, we are the world leaders in sports.
Yes, we are.
Memorabilia. And we have a very strong and successful history of selling sports-themed works at Heritage.
Which these are.
Exactly. For instance, a few years ago, I want to say about maybe 7 years ago at this point, we sold a Rockwell Saturday Evening Post study of Beans Reardon, an umpire, for the Saturday Evening Post. We offered it in a sports sale at $300,000 to $500,000.
Oh, interesting.
And it sold for $1.68 million to a sports collector, but we had bidders from both collecting communities on that work. It was a really exciting moment. At that time, it established a new auction record for an oil study by Rockwell, and it stands still today as the most expensive oil study by Rockwell to come to the auction block. So what we're doing today with this auction is similar. So we've got these 4 major sporting themed works.
Yes.
The Sandlot Saints will be the first one lotted in the sale from 1983. It's incredible. It is just this sensory overload, almost Bruegel-esque.
Oh, yes.
Scene where you can look at these paintings over and over and see different things.
Yes.
You will see someone spitting out gum after the 10th time you look at it. You will see lovers on a ratty couch in the corner, maybe not seeing it the first time. People of every race and color and age are in this composition, and they're playing ball on the street in sort of a burnt out area of New Orleans, right sort of in the shadow of the NFL stadium.
Yeah.
So it's a real sort of commentary on American life, right? Because obviously professional sports are such an important part of our world. Yes. But it's the daily games that we all play together with our children, with our friends, with our partners, with people you meet for the first time on the playing fields. That's a timeless subject matter that Barnes does better than almost anyone. So we've got Sandlot Saints. You're going to see a great football scene where it's just this like cacophony of limbs and athleticism and sweat and guts and dust being kicked up. And what's really interesting
he was a professional athlete, and he brought that knowledge of the body and movement and motion into his work, even with single figures.
Yeah,
but then when he puts them together, wow.
I mean, again, he was self-taught. He used to get in trouble and get written up, fined in the locker room for wasting time sketching his teammates instead of working on the next play, because his heart was always with art. So what's interesting about the football scene is what Barnes did very intentionally is show players in both contemporary uniforms and almost Greco-Roman uniforms to show that this is a pastime that's as old as time, really.
Yes, yeah.
Timeless.
Right.
So I think this will appeal to many of our client base when they see that work. It's one of my favorites. Another thing that Barnes does in some of these works is he goes right up close on the picture plane. You are right there. You can smell the sweat.
Right.
So one of my colleagues said, actually, it's true, if these figures, if they sort of elongated and stood up outside of the jumble of bodies, they wouldn't even fit on the picture plate.
Oh gosh, would be 8 feet tall.
Right. Yeah. But I love that.
Yeah, I know. It's instantly recognizable.
You're instantly
very, very distinctive.
Exactly.
You know Ernie Barnes when you see it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for our marketplace to see these works come up. But I will say that another sort of exciting and endearing part of this group from a third collection is 2 beautiful Ernie Barnes works on paper that are studies for seminal works You will see them in our catalog and on our site. And what I love about them is, first, they're large sheets, about 30 by 22 inches. They hold a wall, they're powerful, but they're works on paper. So the price point is very different. And I like that because we've talked about this before, Christina, that we feel it's very important to present masterworks at every price point for our audience because we want people to be able to collect.
Yes.
Whatever they can collect,
yes.
whether it's $1,000 print or $1 million Rockwell and everything.
Now,
in
our
between.
signature sales have a certain kind of price range or
Yes,
starting, and then we
yes.
have a lot of showcase sales where this kind of material shows up, works on paper,
Yeah.
prints and multiples, things like that.
Exactly.
That are a great entry point.
Exactly.
Or a completist dream.
A completist dream. I love that. That's right. So we're sort of on the fence about whether to put these two Barnes works on paper into this sale or an online sale, but we said, you know what? Let's present them and tell sort of another story alongside these other Barnes and make it sort of a moment.
Yes.
They're gorgeous.
Yes,
and they're well priced. You know, they're under, one is at $10,000 to $15,000. I think the other one's around $20,000. So that's a very approachable price point because they're not six figure. So, you know, you never know what will happen until the day of the auction. But we find it very exciting to bring material that everybody can participate on. Yeah.
So also on the same day, May 16th, is it just later? Is it just after?
Yes. So our main American art sale from various owners with most of the material you see behind me will take place at 11 o'clock Central Time. And we will have previews, of course. We're in Chicago now. We're doing Palm Beach. We've done Dallas. We're going to New York for about 10 days where we're hosting a symposium on American modernism. I urge you all to join us in New York for that. But following that auction at 2 o'clock Central Time, we are holding a very exciting and sort of anxiously awaited by the marketplace round 2 of Boy Scouts of America.
Right.
Rockwells, really beautiful material. And you might remember from last season that we sort of held our inaugural auction with 25 lots from Boy Scouts.
That's right.
That did very, very well. The marketplace responded voraciously to the offerings. It was really exciting. And again, it sort of ticks off a lot of boxes with these auctions because not only are we able to handle museum quality masterpieces, help the Boy Scouts, but all proceeds are going to survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Yes.
So there's so many facets to the good that's happening with these Boy Scouts auctions.
Right.
So on May 16th, we're holding round 2 and we're doing something a little bit bigger this time. So we will have a traditional brick and mortar standalone session, just like American art, with 28 lots from Boy Scouts. It will be 10 Rockwells, 8 oils, 2 studies.
Okay.
But we've got 2 Dean Cornwells. We've got Satari, Joseph Satari, who created quite a sensation when we offered them last round. Because for those of us who are not familiar with Joseph Satari, you should know who he is because it's sort of exciting in our category to sort of reintroduce or introduce.
That's right.
An important illustrator to the marketplace. So Joseph Satari, who's still alive and well, was an incredibly important part of the Boy Scout story because Leyendecker and Rockwell both were house illustrators for the Boy Scouts. Rockwell worked for decades with the Boy Scouts. What people don't realize is that Joseph Satari was his assistant for decades and ended up becoming the in-house illustrator for the Boy Scouts. So incredible material. He's a wonderful draftsman, very talented.
Yeah.
For some who came in during our last preview, they thought some of the Sataris were Norman Rockwells. They're that good. And we offered them last time with opening bids of, I think, $1,000. We set by far new auction records. We sold a couple for over $50,000 in the last season. So we're offering some beautiful Satari works. But what's really interesting, you'll love this story. One work in particular I want to talk about, I don't know if our audience will be able to see it, but we'll show you images of it, is this beautiful Rockwell titled Can't Wait. It was done, one of the Rockwell studies, but what's really cool is the story behind it, okay? Yeah. So it's this great scene, classic Rockwell, this little boy, Hank Bergman, who was one of Rockwell's favored and often used models. You know, if you go through the Rockwell catalog resume, you will see Redhead Hank in many an image, including post covers. But this is the story. So Rockwell and Satari were in the studio doing some work. And in walked local boy Hank Bergmans in his Boy Scout suit that was 3 sizes too large, walked right into the studio, and Satari turned to Rockwell and said, "You got your next cover." He just walked right into the studio.
Oh, I love that.
So Satari was sort of instrumental in discovering young redhead Hank.
It's so cute.
And it turned into this fabulous work. I mean, my God, you can't get more Rockwellian than this.
I know.
It is so great. I mean, I always say, anyone who was a child, we've all been children, can relate to that. We've all dressed up in our older siblings' clothing or wanted to be bigger than we were with the dog.
And felt bigger than we were when we had them on. Yes,
standing up tall.
Yep.
I just think it's wonderful. This is
too.
one of the treasures that's coming up in our Boy Scout auction on May 16th. But the other image, I know we're sort of short on time, you can find it all on our website, ha.com. There are, again, really an embarrassment of riches when you look at these works. It's sensory overload in the best possible way. But one last work I need to point out is the lot that we're putting on the cover. It is this Rockwell right here titled "We Too Have a Job to Do." And what I love about this work from the 1940s, incredibly important period in American art and American history, of course, in pop culture, is the fact that this work was created the same period that Rockwell was tasked by FDR to create the 4 freedoms as propaganda, for lack of a better word, to support the Allies and the movement in World War II.
Yeah.
So FDR wanted Rockwell to create an image like this. This is incredibly important. Of the Boy Scout behind the American flag, just the salute. Again, it's all about stripping away what's not needed and creating this one iconic image of an every Boy Scout with the American flag behind him from the 40s, from the same period where he painted freedom from fear, freedom from want, all this incredible material, which, by the way, Steven Spielberg has used those as cinematic film stills in a lot of his film. This is the period. This is the golden period for Rockwell. So the material from Boy Scouts in this auction spans sort of the 1930s to the 1970s. But since we're talking, we can't talk about it all. We'll be here forever. But I just wanted to point that out to you and just mention that because it's one of those goosebump-inducing paintings.
Right. And that's the cover of the BSA catalog?
That'll be the cover.
That makes sense?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to point out is that we do open these auctions early for bidding, for online bidding, and these we think we're going to open around April 25th.
That's right.
So you can jump the gun if you want and look up these wonderful works, and you can even start bidding on them as early as
That's right. You
April
can track
25th.
them already.
That's right.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
well, I'm looking forward to this. I love this art season that we do
know.
twice a year, and American art to me is sort of the anchor. And,
I know.
and
I know
enjoy
you love
working on it so
That's
much.
why I love doing these with you.
Yeah, I like the American art, and I love the illustration art, and all of this just comes together. So
I love that.
yeah, so it's nice to be here with you today.
It's
in
so nice to
Chicago.
be in Chicago with you. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So that is it. Everyone check that out. There's also a BSA dedicated video from last season if you want to know a little bit more about that. And so look for that on our website. And we'll see you in May.